Welcome to the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Pluff. Each week, we will cover various topics that dads struggle with in their fitness journey. I'll give you actionable steps that you can apply right away, not only to take back control of your own health, but so you're able to be a better example for your kids too. All right, we've got Chris on the podcast today. Chris is a former client of mine. We worked together about a year ago now, last spring and last summer. He was a lot of fun to be with. He was one of my very first clients to go to Disney World while we worked together. And since then, I believe I've had 5 clients. So he started a trend. And none of them have yet to invite me. But I'm glad to have him on the show today. I'm going to let him introduce himself and we'll get started.
Hello, I'm Chris from Trinity, North Carolina, the dad of 4. I've got 2 who are adults and 2 who are under 13. And that's what else would you like to know about me, Anthony?
So kind of go ahead and kind of tell us, or what do you do for work? You said you're a dad of 4, so we know that you're super busy, but I know that when we started working together, your goal is just kind of get into a routine where that would kind of fit in, not cutting into work. Just kind of tell us a little bit about what you do, and we can kind of go from there.
Okay, so I'm an elementary school principal. So from August through early June every year, I am slammed and pretty busy. And then, summers, I have summers are a little bit of a slower pace for me. But during the school year, I have not only myself to keep up with and the family activities and everything, but also I'm the principal of a 530 student school with lots going on, 65, 70 staff to manage. So it takes up quite a bit of time. But you're right. Whenever I started with you, I was looking for ways to get into routine so that I could fit health and fitness into that busy schedule. So that's what we worked on a lot last summer.
Awesome. So you're in charge of a lot of people. A lot of people depend on you there. So I know that sometimes kind of taking care of yourself can kind of get pushed to the side there. So can you talk a little bit about that? How do you prioritize yourself with, especially in the past year or two, and especially in the schools, it's been a little crazy with everything going on. So kind of touch a little bit upon that.
It has been a little bit crazy. I used to think that it would be fun to start a brand new school, like design everything from scratch. But I feel like I've kind of done that about 7 times in the last 2 years. COVID restrictions changed. So maybe not as much fun as maybe I can check that one off of my to-do list. But some things I do to like make time for myself. One of the things I do is get up early. I am a morning person, and my day starts much better if I'm able to get up, have a cup of coffee, spend a couple minutes to myself, do some meditation. That's typically whenever I try to do my exercise, get it out of the way first thing in the morning. Because if I wait till later, then it doesn't happen. I'd say that's the primary way is I take a few minutes. I get up before everyone else, and that's when I take my time for myself.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely not a morning person. I'm a morning person by force now. I think when you have younger kids, you kind of have to be at times. I could be tired through the whole day, and then I get that wave of energy at night. So I used to just, my wife would go to bed and I would stay up late, and that's kind of when I would have my alone time, get things done that I needed to. But now, like, if my daughter wakes up at 6 o'clock. Somebody's got to be up with her. It's not fair to have my wife always be the one to go. So I've kind of had to shift that as well. And it has been challenging for me to kind of, be naturally such a night owl and then force yourself to get up early and stuff. But I mean, if I was taking 2 hours to myself in the evenings, I can flip that and do it. I'm not perfect with that in the morning yet. I still don't always like to work out. I don't like to work out in the mornings. I prefer to do it later in the day, but sometimes that's not always feasible. So you said you're a morning person, you get your stuff done in the mornings. What happens if you have maybe, let's say this year you have all these COVID restrictions, things are changing, and you're the one that kind of implemented at your school? What happens if, for a couple weeks in a row, you have to be in the building by 6 to make sure everybody else is doing what they're supposed to? How do you kind of handle that? Or have you felt like you've been able to kind of delegate some of those tasks to other people to kind of help you out?
Well, fortunately, I have a great team, so I'm typically able to delegate that kind of stuff to other people, because I have young kids, a young family. I'm also sympathetic to folks who work with me and for me who also have young families and the demands that that places on you. So with my admin team, we try to make sure, that, they know I have to get one of my kids to daycare in the morning on certain days. So that is just kind of an understanding that we would come to, was that, I'm going to be here on time, but, it might just be that I'm coming in right at the last minute. But, of course, if I have to make other arrangements, then I make other arrangements. But working with good people really helps. Working with people who understand your situation really helps. And so that's really how I have managed the last couple of years of running a school through COVID, is by having great people around me.
Yeah, no, that's definitely important. If you can rely on other people, it makes your job a lot easier too.
Yes.
What about your wife? I know you said you kind of carve out time for yourself there. Is she pretty active? Is that something that you guys kind of schedule, or how does that work in your house?
In terms of activities, so yeah, she's opposite me. She's much more of a night owl, whereas I'm anything in the morning. But we do set aside time to make sure that we spend time together. She has some flexibility in her job as far as like when she can work, things like that. So like we've done things like meet for lunch before, during the summer, or like just yesterday we were able to. So we make time for ourselves that way. We will occasionally go on the evening walk together once our youngest two kids are far enough apart in age that the one is sort of old enough to start watching the youngest one, and she loves the chance to be able to do that. So sometimes we'll put the youngest one to bed and tell the older one, like, we're gonna go out for a walk for a few minutes, make sure he stays in bed. And so that's nice to be at a stage where we can do that kind of a thing. In terms of that's the kind of activity we do together. So I like to run as one of my activities, and early on, whenever I was starting to run, I convinced my wife to go out on a run with me, and I think we just did some like walk run intervals or something, And towards the end of the run, she looked at me and she said, "I love you, but if you want to find a couples activity to do, it's going to have to be something else." So now whenever I've done like a race or something like that, she's been out there supporting me. I have some, I have a like a box that has all of my race bibs and medals, and it also has like the posters that she and the kids made me to cheer me on and everything like that. But yeah, I couldn't make a runner out of her.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Just, finding something you both enjoy together, I think is important. And now that your kids are getting a little older, being able to kind of go and walk. That my kids are young right now, and so we can't just leave them.
Right.
We get somebody called on us. But my wife and I, we used to like to play racquetball. When we were first married, we used to play racquetball together, and then they did some construction on them, and then by the time they opened it up, my son was born, and then my daughter was born shortly after. So we haven't really been able to pick that back up. But that's something we don't live very close to family, so we don't have a lot of people that we can just hey, come over and we're gonna go for a couple hours. And so that's something we kind of look forward to. Like if we do go visit family, we try and go on a walk together or something like that. We got a stroll or this pretty cool wagon where we put the kids in and we'll just walk. It's a good workout for me, pushing it up the hills and things like that. But those things are always fun to do. But you said with your school, with your staff, you said you had a pretty supportive staff, pretty supportive admin team and all that. And I know the last year's kind of probably been a little different than the rest of your teaching career, your time as a principal. How do you encourage kind of some movement or kind of healthy habits or things like that with the people that work for you?
Well, one of the things I've really had to encourage the last couple years, especially this year. This year was unique because we were coming back full time in person, but there were still a lot of restrictions in place, at least at the beginning of the school year. But we were also dealing with the fact that we'd had kids who were had been learning remotely for a year and a half. Kids who had been unsupervised, who had been out of the school routine. So there were a lot more behavior issues than that were stemming from some underlying emotional issues and some trauma and everything at the beginning of the year. And I think that caught all of us by surprise, and it took a much heavier toll on the adults in the building than we anticipated. I'd like to say that we came back really gung-ho in August, and by the end of September, we all just kind of like sat back and said like, "Whoa, what on earth is going on?" Not quite what I expected. And so we had to do some regrouping. And it became pretty clear that one of the things I had to focus on as a leader was empowering my staff to take care of their mental health. And so, that was something that we talked quite a bit about during the spring semester, was just things that they could do to take care of themselves, take care of their mental health. I've always been pretty open with them about, my physical activity, and it was actually, so I've run 3 marathons, and I ran the first one after I started working at the school where I am now. I've been there 7 years. I wasn't sure that I wanted to actually run that distance until I met a teacher who had, and the competitive part of me kind of took over and was like, well, if she's running, I can't, step away from that challenge that I've created in my mind. So that's that's just something that they've always known about me, is, that I like to be physically active and encourage them to do the same thing. We've talked about challenging ourselves and pushing ourselves, and we'll relate that to ways that I've pushed myself, physically in the past. When I first took up running, I was actually still in the classroom, and that's something that I would incorporate with my students as well. Was setting goals and taking steps toward meeting goals, and it was a good teaching tool, good way to build connections also.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. Just kind of being that example. I know that sometimes in schools, you don't really get to know your principal too well. They're kind of
Yeah.
this face and stuff, and so that that's probably a great way for not only your staff but the students too to kind of get to know you there. So that I think that's pretty cool. I've never run a marathon. My wife has done some half marathons, so maybe that's the next thing on my list there. But
There you go.
but something I don't really talk about on my page too much, or on social media, is I used to teach elementary PE in a brick and mortar school as well, and
Mhm.
I remember in the staff workroom, we always had somebody always brought some kind of snacks,
Yep.
and they're always there every day. Every day you go, check your mail, heat up your food for lunch or something like that. You're always tempted by some. People mean well. There's all these great things, but a lot of times it would just be people would bring stuff from home, or a lot of like the organizations around us would donate food, and so we just have all these like sweets and
Yes.
all these things pretty much every single day. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with kind of that temptation every day?
Not well. I guess the other thing I would be, or one of the other things I would be known for among my staff, is my love of snacks. Um, Zebra cakes are a big weakness.
Nice.
And my lead teacher, we call her an instructional facilitator. In her office, she has a supply of cookies that I refer to as my emotional support cookies. So yeah, that's something I don't deal with all that well, quite honestly. Yeah, that's sweets are one of my weaknesses. I enjoy them.
Yeah, I know. I tried to do my best to always pack my lunch and stuff, and
Yep.
I would always eat my food first before I walked in there, because if I'm already full, I'm less likely to grab something. And there
Yeah.
were a couple pretty good restaurants close by where every Friday or something we'd go. But being the PE teacher, I got kids from every single class bringing me birthday treats,
Oh,
and I'm sure as a principal you do too. And I always felt bad. I never wanted to, they spent time making these treats at home, and like I felt bad throwing them away. I definitely never let them see me throw them away, and so I'd eat them,
oh yeah.
But it's like, you got 500 plus kids in your school, like you could be getting a birthday treat every day. Like, do you find that sometimes the environment that you're in can kind of make it difficult to kind of reach where you want to be?
Yes, it can. I try to like um, pack my own lunch every day, and plan out my meals and my snacks for the week. I try to set aside some time on the weekend for like meal prep and planning for the upcoming week. But then there are days and times where it's just like, that apple in my lunchbox would be good, but that birthday cupcake that is sitting on my desk that the second grader brought me, would be even better. So I'll have the birthday cupcake. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have found like kind of the environment you're in can really play a factor in kind of almost your willpower there and kind of do well. Since I'm work from home most of the time now, I'm able to, I'm not tempted by anybody else. I eat my own food. I'm not seeing what other people are eating, but I know that like if somebody I was working with was going on a coffee run or something like that, they're like, you want something? Well, yeah, I want something. Like, or they're going to lunch somewhere. Like, I'm not gonna go get it, but if you're if you're offering, like, I'm gonna eat it, and I'm sure that that's something that comes up pretty routinely in your work environment.
Yeah. So for a while, we didn't do so much this or as consistently this year. But in the past, it was sort of a tradition among the office staff that we would order lunch on Friday. We'd get someplace to deliver it, or someone would run and go pick it up. And part of that was just we might not be able to stop what we're doing and physically sit and have a meal together, but just kind of the enjoying a shared experience together. So there's something like that, and that was something that you and I worked on a lot last year. Was the I remember talking about it after the Disney trip. Was a part of our Disney trip was eating all the good food that's at Disney. And I remember one of the things that you said to me was, you're not going to, what's really going to matter about that trip is, those shared experiences that you have together, not so much, that you ate a certain number of calories or restricted yourself in this way or that way. And so that's one of the things that I try to be conscious of is, controlling my environment to prompt myself to make healthy choices, but also, having that balance that there is something to enjoying a shared experience together.
Yeah, no, I actually remember that conversation very well. Like I said, I think I've had like 5 clients go to Disney World since you did, which is pretty funny. And that's something I've almost had that same exact conversation with everyone, because people get really caught up if they want to lose 20 pounds, 25 pounds, that number's in their head all the time. And yes, you want to get there as quickly as you can, but if you really want to get there, does it really matter if it took you 3 months or 5 months? You still want to get there, and I'd rather get there and still enjoy foods that I like. I don't want to just cut out everything. And going to Disney World, like that's a for some people that's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and you don't want to sit there the whole time and just be miserable. You're irritable because you haven't eaten anything. You're out in the sun all day. You're walking around, probably doing more movement than you would on a normal day. So you're burning more calories. You're eating less, and you're out in the hot sun. Like your wife's probably not going to be very happy with you because you're not in a great mood, right? And so I think just sometimes we get really caught up. We get really caught up in kind of where we want to go instead of enjoying the moment right now. And like you said, I could eat out every day. I love eating at rest. I don't know why. I just really do. But it does make it harder. A lot of the foods we eat, they prepare them in different ways than you would at home, and so they have added calories. Portion sizes are pretty big, and I remember that's one thing we kind of talked about too. Is just you can eat these things, just maybe try and eat half of it. See how you feel. If you're still hungry, eat the second half later. Eating slowly, eating until satisfied. All these things, it's like they are tools that you can do everywhere. Tracking your food, bringing a food scale to Disney World, probably not ideal, right? and so ask the chef at your restaurant to weigh out your food for you. They're probably gonna look at you and then tell you, get out of my kitchen, right? It's there's things like that. It's not always feasible to do, but like you said, food is more than just calories coming in, coming out. It's enjoying time with people. Like I track my calories, and but I don't do it like 100% of the time. Like if I have a goal I'm trying to reach, I track it a little closer. And a lot of times I will, I'll plan my meals ahead, but then if I come home and my wife has a meal prepared, I'm not going to be like, you know what? I'm not eating that today. I'm going to go make my own food. And I'll be honest, I used to do that. I
Hmm.
used to do that because it was much easier for me to keep myself accountable if I knew exactly what I was going in. But if I can control my breakfast, control my lunch, control my snacks, I know what I have to play with. If I'm a couple hundred calories off for dinner, in the long run, that's not going to matter much. But I just enjoyed this meal with my kids. I just enjoyed this meal with my wife. And whether, I weigh a pound more at the end of this month than I wanted to, the long run, I couldn't tell you what I weighed a year ago from today. You know what I mean? But I can remember times very vividly when I would go to Thanksgiving and I would pass up on foods because I was stressed out about, wanting to lose weight or getting, and yes, it's important if you do have a goal to, you can have a couple brownies, maybe not 5 or 6, like you can still set
Right.
limits on yourself, right? And then every once in a while you're going to eat a whole bag of Sour Patch Kids, like it happens. I'm not saying to
Yep.
me, but it happens. But
Cookies.
do what? Yours is cookies?
Yeah, your emotional support cookies. Every once in a
Right.
while.
I'm gonna put that jar in my in my lunch now.
That's
But
right.
but no, I think I think that's and that's pretty awesome that you still remember that. That was a long time ago, but I think it's something that um I think it's something that a lot of people don't really think about. Like if you're going on vacation and um you're passing up going to a good restaurant and you're bringing your own food and stuff, you're passing up going on a restaurant for one meal, and you got 364 other days of the year to to kind of work towards your goals there. And I think it speaks a little bit too um I think it speaks a little bit too to that's kind of our relationship with food too. If we're that stressed out over one meal, then there's probably something else going on. And I think that kind of goes into to um, uh, I mentioned quite a bit. Like my wife and I like to talk about, like, we have sometimes foods. Some foods are more nutritious, some less. And so like my son found out recently that he really likes cheesecake. And so he always asks for it. Then he'll always be like, is that a sometimes food? And then so he knows we're not having this every single day and things like that. You've got younger kids. How do you at your house, how do you handle kind of maybe your kids not wanting vegetables as much or wanting some other foods? How do you handle that?
Um, uh, it kind of depends on the child. For us, the my daughter, who is 12, she's very picky. She has always had like control issues around food. Um, and so she likes to be involved in she likes to cook. And in the family, I'm the cook, as well. So she likes to be involved in the preparing of it, and she likes to see it. So there's certain foods that she doesn't like. So if she sees something like onions going into it, she'll watch really closely, want to help, and we encourage them to at least try a bite. Like you can't know for sure that you're going to like something or not until you've at least taken a bite of something. With the younger one, we talk about, he's 3, will be 4 in September. And we talk about, foods that help you grow big and strong, because he's interested in being big and strong at the moment. And so we'll talk about how, things like fruits and vegetables and all that are the foods that help you grow big and strong. And he's not been too picky now. He's 3, so he's moody, and one day he'll love broccoli. He really does like broccoli, and then the next day he won't even look at it. But he's pretty open to, if we can get him to try that one bite of something, then he'll be open to liking it. unless Sissy doesn't like it. Now, if Sissy doesn't like it and she gets her opinion out there first, then it's all over for him. So I don't know what the solution to that is, like dinner with blindfolds or something. But.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. You know, just trying to stay like non-biased on foods is tough. You said like he saw his sister didn't like it, so he didn't like. I remember this was probably like a year ago. I remember there was something I ate and I was kind of like, that didn't taste too good, and I said it out loud, and
Mhm.
and then my son was kind of like, that's not very good, and I was like, I caught myself right there, and I was like, it wasn't that the food wasn't good, it was just the way I had cooked it wasn't very good. But then he's associating it as not very good. So I've been trying. I know I've been trying my best to be like, just kind of stay neutral on food, you know, or just,
Yep.
like you said, just trying things, taking a bite of things, and I think it's hard too, because I remember when I was a kid, there are tons of foods I didn't like. And I eat all of them now, and so I don't
Yep.
know where that comes from, and so I know that's really hard, because like my kids are pretty good. They'll at least try something. They'll at least try it, and they may not eat the whole thing. My son doesn't eat a ton of dinner. He eats a lot of lunch and doesn't eat much for dinner. So we try not to force him to. He's not hungry. He's not hungry, right? And so we just try and kind of stay neutral on that one. But yeah, it is weird, because some of the things like he doesn't like right now, I'm like, well, I don't want to force him to eat it, because if you feel forced to eat something, well, you're probably not going to want to eat it. And then at the same time, I'm like, well, how's he going to know if he likes it? So it's like it's this game all the time. And then, like you said, though, sometimes they'll eat things, and another time, but I'm the same way. I kind of eat the same thing for lunch every day, but I cycle through. And so for like a
Mhm.
week, I will eat the same thing. I'll do the meal prep, like you said earlier. I'll eat the same thing for lunch every single day. And then I burn myself out a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, I'm probably not going to eat that next week. And then I cycle through, and next
Yeah.
month I do the same thing. And so I think it's okay. Like I think it does make it more difficult sometimes when you are constantly changing your food. That's what I found for me, is if I can have a consistent, breakfast, consistent lunch, and it doesn't have to be the
Yeah.
same one, but cycle through 4 or 5 of them. I know then I don't have to track anything. I only have to track it once, because then I
Right.
don't have to track anything, because then I already know, how much protein I'm getting and things like that. And so then I can just eat the food and enjoy it, and not have to worry about it. But I do think, kind of like what you said, if you're ordering out for lunch and stuff, it does make it a little bit more difficult, because you may go out to eat with somebody and they got something different than you. They ask you to try it, and you're taking bites of all these different things and stuff. And so I think that's where it kind of comes in, where you kind of got to focus on, like, it's one meal. It's one meal, and enjoy it. But try your best to stay consistent, because if you're doing that for every meal, it makes it very difficult to even know what's going on. You can't really assess the situation, because you had 3 bites of your wife's nachos, and then you had a chimichanga, then you had 3 bags of chips, and it's so like things like that can be a little bit more difficult. So if you are trying to lose weight, things like that, then I think it is easier when you're trying to keep as many things as consistent as possible. But if you're happy with where you are, you're happy, then you do have a little bit more leeway to kind of play with there. And not everybody wants to be, super thin. Some people are happy where they are, and that's a great place to be too, because then all of a sudden you don't stress out over food and things like that. So I think there's some value in that too, because I think with I guess we could call it diet culture or something. A lot of us do stress out over food. Like, we eat
Mhm.
at least 3 times a day. Most people probably eat closer, I would say, to 10, right? Like, we're having snacks, we're going to grab. And if you're stressed out over food every single time, like, that's a lot of stress into your life. And that to be honest, that's part of the reason why I like to track, because I know if I track it, I have some control. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It kind of takes, and I've gotten away from it a little bit, but like I used to track everything. You know, I'm counting chips and like it says like 17 chips, and I'm like, okay, I had 31, so I have to I have to
Yep.
add these in here and stuff. And so I think just well, one of the things that I know I know that we kind of worked on tracking a little bit. We worked on tracking a little bit. We focused on the eating slowly, eating till satisfied and stuff. One thing that has helped me is kind of like what I said earlier is if I can track a couple meals a day, and then for dinner I'm just focusing on eating until satisfied, right? And things like that. I don't know from your experience, if you found it was easier to track, if it was less stressful to track, or if something else works for you. What do you do on kind of a normal basis there?
So my goal is always balance, because I've done it both ways, where I've tracked and where I've not tracked. And what I have found is that they are each stressful in their own way, and can each get stressful for me in their own way. So in times that I'll track, um, and I'll try to be aware of, okay, is tracking at the moment adding stress to me to the point where it's not worth it. And then I will take a break. So I usually use the MyFitnessPal app, and for a while I had quite a streak going of like days that I had logged in. I can't remember. I might have been at like 1,000 days or something at one point. And then it got to the point where it was so stressful thinking about that. I was like, all right, I've got to stop, and I've got to let that go, and then work on making healthy choices for a while, and trying to eat more fruits and vegetables. On the whole, I do like to track my food. I think it helps me make better choices, particularly in the late afternoon and evening, because those are the times whenever I tend to overeat, or eat more than I should. And so if I have in front of me, this is what I've had for the day, then I can go back and look and say, oh, you know what, you had that donut for breakfast, and then you went to McDonald's for lunch. So if you're still hungry, probably ought to choose the apple instead of the box of Cheez-Its, or something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Yeah, I think I don't think your situation is uncommon where people track for a long time, but they're not really getting a result. They're just tracking it. They're
Yeah.
tracking it, but then they're kind of I know I used to do this too, where I would kind of put my calories in. I'm like, okay, I have this many calories today, and I was like a wizard with it. I
Oh
would,
yeah.
I would go to McDonald's or something, eat a Big Mac and fries, and I'm like, okay, well, how can I still hit my goal? And so I would fit it in my calories and stuff, but then I was like, um, I wasn't I hadn't had a piece of fruit in 2 weeks or so, and just like all these things. And I was like, but I hit my calorie goal and stuff. And
Yep.
so I think that can be one of the issues, but I think it is really important for most people to track for at least a little while, because I think just bringing like awareness to the situation. Even I know we kind of worked on taking pictures of
Yes.
your meals too, and that's another way to track that people don't think about. You take a picture of your meal, just keep it on your phone. You don't have to share it with anybody, but it kind of gives you the awareness, like, okay, well, this is what my plate looked like. What could
Mhm.
I add to this? What could I add? Not necessarily take away, but what could I add to this to kind of make it a little bit more nutritious? Or just writing down. I I find MyFitnessPal fairly simple to use because it's on my phone. I'm on my phone anyway. I know that some people like to write it in a journal, things like that. That way you're not having to scan barcodes and things like that. But then I have to remember to bring the notebook with, like, or the notes section. I don't have to type anything into my phone. I just,
Yeah.
I found it pretty, but that's me. Not everybody likes that. Taking pictures seems to work well for people. But I think one thing at tracking too is that when you do track everything, and if you track it accurately, some people like to, they track the salad they had, but they don't track the third cookie they ate, because they don't want to see it. So if you're honest with yourself, you'll start to realize too, like, I only have 2,200 calories, or however many your calorie goal is set at for the day. And I went to McDonald's for lunch and my meal was 1,200. Now I have, 1,000 calories for the other 23 hours of the day.
Right.
And so the thing that helped me with tracking at first too is it helps me make some better choices too. Like I love like sub sandwich, like the hot sub sandwiches, Good Sense, Firehouse Subs, places like that. But I started to realize, like, when I'm eating this, and I'm like, the rest of the day I'm pretty hungry because I ate
Yep.
half my daily calories in one meal. And
Yep.
so it's really helped me be able to kind of, I guess, budget my food a little better. And so those days I know, like, hey, my parents are coming in town and we're going to dinner. Well, they already told me what restaurant we're going to, so I'm gonna look ahead on the menu and find something. Like, I really want that double bacon cheeseburger, but I could probably settle for the normal cheeseburger and be pretty satisfied there. And if I do want the double bacon cheeseburger, well, now I got to figure out the rest of the day. How can I get through without being miserable and snapping at my wife because I'm super irritable all day long and stuff. So it's really, I think that's one thing that has helped me the most with tracking, is being able to kind of realize it's like I can still enjoy some of these foods, but I got to make decisions. I have to make the Mexican restaurants are impossible. Don't even try and track them. You're never gonna have 12 chips. You're gonna,
Right.
so just just forget those days, and you're not trying to lose weight when you're going to a Mexican restaurant, because the food's too good and you will eat more in a couple hours than you did all week. But Chris, I really appreciate you coming on the show this week. I think we got a lot of valuable information out of you. I know that you're really busy. You said you got 4 kids. You're running a school, and so I think just the steps you're taking to kind of, to be an example, not only for your kids but for your staff as well and your students. I think that's really cool. Is there anything else you want to share with us before we wrap up here?
Um, no, I don't think so. I feel like we covered a lot.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I think we got a lot covered here, like you said. And I think I think a lot of people are in pretty similar situations to you. They may not be a principal at school, but they're working full time. They're probably in charge of somebody at work, and they've got their family of their own. And you gave us some good tips today on how you kind of balance kind of everything there, and kind of seem to do it, kind of have everything under control there.
Or at least seem that way.
Yeah. That's all we can do, right?
That's right. Yeah.
But thanks again for coming on the show. And
Of course.
it was great catching up, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Sounds good.
That concludes this episode of the Fatherhood Fitness Podcast. Thank you for those of you who took time out of your busy schedules to listen. If you have any questions or comments or an idea for a topic for a future episode, please feel free to reach out, and I'd love to hear from you.